Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to break down the ancient game of chess into a simple mission, something you can get the hang of in just a few minutes.
All right, so here's the plan. We'll kick things off with the number one goal, how to win. Then we'll meet your army and your battlefield. We'll cover how all your pieces move, learn some really cool special moves, and then define what checkmate, stalemate, and a draw actually are. And to finish up, we'll give you a simple three-step plan for your very first game.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, the goal. What is chess really all about? You know, the ultimate objective is actually way simpler than you might think.
Now, you might think it's all about, capturing the most pieces or being the most aggressive player on the board. But it's not. Every single move, every trade, every sacrifice you make, it all points to one single thing.
And here it is. Your mission is simple. Trap and capture the enemy king. That's it. That's your prime directive. Everything else we're about to learn is just a tool to make that happen. Always keep your eyes on that king, and you'll never lose your way.
Okay, so you've got your mission. But to capture a king, you're going to need an army and a battlefield, right? So let's get familiar with the tools you'll be working with.
All right, first up, the board. It's a perfect 8x8 grid of 64 squares. Now, setting it up correctly is your first little test. Just remember these simple rules. The square in the bottom right corner must be a light-colored square. And the queen, she always starts on a square that matches her own color. So, white queen on a white square, black queen on a black square. If you're playing as white, your pieces will set up on the first and second rows. Black sets up on the 7th and 8th.
Now, not all your soldiers are created equal. It's really helpful to think of them in terms of power levels, or points. This is just a rough guide, but it's super useful when you're thinking about trading pieces. Your queen is an absolute powerhouse, worth about 9 points. The rook is a solid 5. And your bishops and knights, they're both worth about 3. So, you probably don't want to trade your 9-point queen for a 1-point pawn. And the king? Well, the king is priceless. You can't put a number on him, because if you lose him, you lose the whole game.
All right, you know the board, you know the pieces. Now for the fun part. Let's talk about how they all move. These are your rules of engagement. First up, the rook. Think of this piece as your battering ram. It moves in straight lines, as far as it wants, as long as nothing's in its way. So that's horizontally, along the rows, and vertically, up and down the columns. Rooks can control huge portions of the board.
Next, the bishop. If the rook is a battering ram, the bishop is your long-range sniper. It slices across the board diagonally, again, for as many empty squares as it wants. Now, you start with 2 of them. One is forever stuck on the light-colored squares and the other on the dark squares. But working together, they're a really powerful pair.
And now, the queen. She is, without a doubt, the most powerful piece on the board. Why? Because she combines the powers of both the rook and the bishop. She can move any number of squares horizontally, vertically, and diagonally. She is the ultimate weapon. Okay, let's talk about the trickiest piece, the knight. This is like your special forces unit. And what makes it so special? It's the only piece that can jump over other pieces, friendly or enemy. It moves in a unique L shape, 2 squares in one direction, and then 1 square to the side. This makes the knight super unpredictable and perfect for surprise attacks. And here he is, the king. He is the most important piece, your VIP. He's not much of an attacker, really. He can only move 1 single square in any direction. But his safety is everything. The entire game revolves around keeping him safe. And last but not least, we have the pawns. You could call them the soul of the army. Now, they have some pretty unique rules. They move straight forward, 1 square at a time. But they capture diagonally forward, also just 1 square. And on their first move, and only their first move, they have the option to jump ahead 2 squares. Don't ever underestimate your pawns. They can be surprisingly powerful. Okay, so you've got the basic moves down. But chess has a couple of special moves that can totally change the game. If you want to level up your play, you absolutely have to know these. First up is a move called castling. This is a brilliant defensive move that does 2 super important things at once. First, it moves your king out of the center and tucks him away safely in a corner. And second, it brings your rook, which was stuck in the corner, out into the center of the action. To do it, the path between the king and rook has to be clear. Then, you move your king 2 squares toward the rook, and the rook just hops over to the other side. It's a game changer.
The other special move is called en passant. It's French for in passing, and it's a special way for pawns to capture. So picture this. Your pawn has advanced down the board. An enemy pawn on its starting square, right next to yours, tries to zoom past you by moving 2 squares forward. Well, en passant gives you a one-time only chance on your very next turn to capture that pawn as if it had only moved 1 square. It's a neat little rule that stops pawns from just sneaking by each other.
So, we know the goal is to capture the king. But how does a game actually end? It's not always a clear win or loss. Let's break down the difference between victory, defeat, and a tie.
Okay, this is probably one of the most important distinctions for a new player. On one hand, you have checkmate. This is the goal. This is your win. It means the enemy king is under attack, we call that being in check, and there is absolutely no legal move they can make to escape. Game over, you win. But then there's stalemate. This is a draw. This is when a player's king is not in check, but that player has 0 legal moves they can make with any of their pieces. The board is frozen for them. That's a draw.
And as stalemate isn't the only way to get a draw. A game can also end in a draw if both players just agree to it, or if the exact same board position happens 3 times. And there's another one. If 50 moves go by where neither player moves a pawn or captures a piece, the game can also be a draw.
All right, you've got the rules, you know how the game ends, now you need a plan, a strategy. Let's talk about the 3 fundamental principles you need to start every single game strong.
There's a famous saying in chess: control the center and you control the game. And for a beginner, this is the single most important strategic idea to grasp. Those 4 little squares right in the middle of the board, that's the most valuable real estate. Why? Well, a piece in the center can see and control way more of the board than a piece on the edge. It has more options, more power.
So here's your simple 3-step opening plan. Step 1. Stake your claim in the center. Push one of your center pawns forward 2 squares. Step 2. Develop your pieces. This just means get your knights and bishops off their starting squares and into the game, pointing towards the center. And step 3. Castle. Get your king to safety as soon as you can. If you do these 3 things in your first few moves, you'll have an amazing foundation for the rest of the game.
And there you have it. The board is set. The army is yours to command. You know the rules. You have a plan. So, what's your first move?